And we're on page 225. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we're continuing. We're on verse 10 of chapter 8. And chapter 8 continues the story of Gideon, who's also known as Yerubbaal, but mainly Gideon in this chapter. And he's now chasing out, he just scored a defeat against Midian and its associates. And he's chasing after the kings to make it a crushing defeat. And he's asking for help. He and his 300 soldiers, who are tired and hungry, are asking for some food from the people of Sukkot and also the people of Penuel. And the people of Sukkot and Penuel refuse. So Gideon says, well, if I defeat these kings, I'm going to enact revenge against you. You'll see. So to Sukkot he says, I'll tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And to the people of Penuel, he says, when I come back in peace, I'll break down this tower. So that's where we left off. Now we're on verse 10 on page 225. And we'll read 10 to 21. V'zevach v'tzalmunah. So these are the kings that he's chasing. Zevach and Salmunah, Bakarkor, Umachanehem imam, Kachameshet asar elef, Kol hanotarim, Mikol machane b'nei kedem, V'hanoflim, Me'a ve'esrim elef ish, Sholef charev. So Zevach and Salmunah are in Karkor, wherever that is, and their camp with them numbers like 15,000. All that were left from all of the camp of those from the east, right? It's Midian and Amalek and other eastern nations that were attacking. And so 15,000 were left from, because 100,000 men fell by the sword. 120,000, yes. 120,000 men fell by the sword, right? So that's the incredible victory. How could 300, Gideon and 300 were able to, and then, well, he had a few also who joined in the course of the battle, but still had to be able to kill 120,000 men. All right, verse 11, Vaya'al Gidon derech hashechunei va'ohalim mikedem lenovach v'yagbaha vayach et hamachaneh v'hamachaneh haya vetach. So Gideon went up by way of those who dwell in the tents from the east of Novach and Yagbaha, and he smote the camp, and the camp was secure. Vayanusu Zevach v'tzalmunah, vayirdof achareihem, vayilkod et shnei malchei Midian, et Zevach ve'et Salmunah, v'chol hamachaneh hecharid. So Zevach and Salmunah ran away, and Gideon, chased after them, and he caught them. The two kings of Midian, Zevach and Salmunah, and all of the camp he caused to tremble. It says here, discomfited. He caused the camp to tremble in fear. 13. Just Marlene is coming in, so just a second there. Okay, so Marlene, we're on page 226. I picked up where we left off last time from verse 10. So we're now at verse 13 on page 226. Vayashav Gidon ben Yoash min hamelchama mil ma'alei hechares. So Gideon returned. Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from war, from the ascent from the hills of Chares. 14. Vayilkad Na'ar me'anshe Sukkot, vayish alehu, vayichtov elav et sarei Sukkot ve'et zekeneha, shiv'im ve'shiva ish. So he caught a young man from the men of Sukkot. Remember this oath that he made, that what he declared to the people of Sukkot: if I come back defeating these two kings, then I'm going to destroy your town, or destroy your people. So he captured a young man from the men of Sukkot and inquired of him, and he wrote, and that is, he wanted to know who the princes and elders are. So then he wrote down for him the princes of Sukkot and its elders, 77 men. So that's what Gideon wanted from this person from Sukkot. Give me the names of the elders and princes of Sukkot. 15. Vayavo el anshe Sukkot, vayomer, hine zevach v'tzalmunah, asher cheraftem oti lemur, hachaf zevach v'tzalmunah, ata biyadecha, ki nitein la'anashecha hayefim lachem. So he came to the men of Sukkot and said, here are Zevach and Salmunah, that you taunted me, saying, are the hands of Zevach and Salmunah in your hands, that we should give to your men, your tired men, bread? Right? Why should we support you? We don't feel like supporting you. You don't have the kings with you. So now he has the kings with them. 16. Vayikach et ziknei ha'ir ve'et kotzei hamidbar ve'et habar kanim vayoda bahem et anshe Sukkot. And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Sukkot. So he taught them. So I don't know. He said he was going to rip their flesh. So does that mean that by teaching them, that's what he did? We'll see in, so we'll see in the commentary and see what ancient Israel says about that. 17. V'et migdal Penuel natatz, vayaharog et anshe ha'ir. And the tower of Penuel he broke down and killed the men of the city. 18. Vayomer el Zevach ve'el Tzalmunah, Eifo ha'anashim asher haragtem betavur, vayomru kamocha kemohem, echad ketoar b'nei hamelech. And he said to Zevach and Tzalmunah, where are the men that you killed in Tavur? And they said, as you are, so were they, of one form with the children of a king. So we'll see what that means soon. 19, Vayomar, Achai b'nei imihem, Chai Adonai, Lu hachayitem otam, lo haragati etchem. And he said, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not kill you. Vayomer leyeter bechoro, kum harogotam, velo shalaf hanaar chabo, ki are, ki odenu naar. So he said to his firstborn son Yeter, get up and kill them. And the young man did not take out his sword because he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Vayomer Zevach v'Tzalmunah, kum ata ufega banu, ki cha'ish gevurato. Vayakom Gidon, vayaharog et Zevach ve'et Tzalmunah, vayikach et hasaharonim asher b'tzavarei gimalehem. So Zevach and Tzalmunah said, you should get up and attack us, because for the man is, so is his strength. And Gideon got up and killed Zevach and Tzalmunah, and he took the crescents that were on their camels' necks. All right, so we'll stop here and look at the commentary here. Some unusual things here that need some explaining, and then we'll see what ancient Israel has to say about it. So bottom of 225, the right-hand side there, Karkor. It's believed to be Karkar in the southeast in the valley of Sirhan, approximately 230 kilometers from the middle of the Dead Sea to the east. So that's a long way to chase, by the way. If you're chasing after the kings back there, 230 kilometers east from the middle of the Dead Sea, so you're going way, way into the country of Jordan today, almost to Iraq. For there fell, more accurately, and those that had fallen, 120,000. I'm on 226 now. The extent of the overwhelming victory is thus vividly revealed. The way of them that dwelt in tents. Archaeologists claim to have established that the way of the tent dwellers, that is, the Hebrew said he chased after them by way of the tent dwellers, corresponds with the route now called the Road of the Nomads, which passes through the gateway between the southwest spurs of the Horan and the broken hills in which the river Zerka has its source. Doesn't help me. The Hebrew phrase presents several grammatical difficulties, and the rendering given is an attempt at making sense. If the translation is correct, the reference can only be to the Bedouin, but the meaning still remains uncertain. Nobach, a city in the territory of Menashe. Yogbaha, a city of God, identified with Kerbet el Jubehat, northwest of Amman, and about midway between it and Es-Salt. Secure, because of the distance which now separated them from Gideon and his men. Discomfited, literally terrified, he inspired fresh panic in the bewildered warriors. Returned, the battle was over and won. With the capture of the two kings, Gideon's purpose was accomplished. On the homeward journey, he executed his threat against those who had refused his men aid. The ascent of Heres, early commentators render before the sun set or after the sun rose. If indeed it is a city, its place has not been identified. Wrote down that a knowledge of writing was widespread at that time is proved by archaeological discoveries. It's interesting, that's even a comment worth commenting on about the writing down. 227, 77 men. The number seems to indicate some form of council similar to the 70 elders of earlier and later days. He came, as no mention is made of an assault, it has been inferred that the city was unprotected and offered no resistance. He taught, the implied object is a lesson. This form of punishment is described in Plato's Republic as one inflicted upon the worst offenders. It still doesn't make sense to me about teaching. What did he teach? I'm not sure. So we'll see from ancient Israel in a moment. Slew the men of the city. The context suggests that he subjected the inhabitants of Penuel to severer punishment than the men of Sukkot. Since they had a tower in which to take shelter, they had no excuse that they feared the Midianites. Where are the men? From the answer, it may be deduced that the question was more than an inquiry as to the whereabouts of the victims. It probably included a demand to produce the bodies for identification, or, failing that, to describe the victims in sufficient detail to establish their identity. Hence the Midianites' answer and Gideon's subsequent remark. Tabor. If Mount Tabor is intended, the difficulty arises as to what Gideon's brothers had been doing so far away from their homes. In the absence of details, all explanations are merely conjecture. 1. The word in the context is difficult. Some connect with what precedes and render as an adverbial accusative. Thy likeness was their likeness, all one. Others, connecting with what follows, render each one resembled, or one of them had the appearance. When we bear in mind that the speakers were not Hebrews, a degree of ambiguity in expression is understandable. Form, in the sense of figure, stature, physical appearance. Sons of my mother, they were my brothers, not my sons. Therefore, they were not responsible for my rebellion and should not have been slain. As the Lord lives, that literally the Lord is living. If you had saved them by slaying his brothers, the Midianites had imposed the duty of blood revenge upon Gideon. All right, we have to look back to the beginning of the story, back in chapter 7, as to what is being referred to here. I would not slay you. It was prevalent not to kill a captured king unless he was brought to justice. Yeter, the name appears as a form of Jethro, the Midianite father-in-law of Moses. It was borne by the father of Amasa and by men of Judah and Asher. So, in other words, it's a common name in Israel. Up and slay them to avenge the blood of his father's brothers. He feared, that is, he feared them. Because of his youth, he did not realize that they were completely at his mercy, and therefore feared to kill them. Da'at Sofrim explains that this indicates the pure character of the children of Israel. Even the son of the mighty Gideon was reluctant to shed blood. The Midianite chiefs were not afraid to die. What they wished to avoid was the agony of a protracted death by an inexperienced hand. Crescents, the Hebrew saharon, a collar with attachments of metal moon-shaped ornaments connected with sahar, Aramaic and Syriac for moon. It was worn by men and women. Okay, so let's see what ancient Israel has. Let's see.
Is it possible that the kings didn't want Gideon to do it and not his son, because it would be a more honorable death to be killed by the leader rather than by a young child? Rather than a protected death.
It's possible, but
More likely.
the chapter, the Bible here is giving it from the perspective of Gideon's son.
We can't hear you, Rabbi. I don't know what happened. You're not on
can hear.
mute, but you're not working.
And can other
can
people
hear.
hear me?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
so
I can hear
Deborah,
you. We can hear you. Oh,
Weird. Put on your captioning. Maybe at least have that. There is captioning.
I'm going to send Deborah a chat. So just a second.
Doo-doo-doo-doo.
So I don't.
yeah. We could even
I don't
hear
know
your
what-
typing, Jonah.
Can everybody else hear him? Oh, okay, it's just me.
Yes.
All right, I'll get out and get back in.
Okay. So the issue is about the perspective, from the perspective of the son, what the son being afraid. Yeah, but it's unclear what's he afraid of. Is he afraid that because he's never used a sword before, or is he afraid of something else? So I don't know. Go ahead.
But as the man is, so is his strength.
Where is that? That's what
That's what
the
kings say.
the kings say. Well, the kings, yes. So they know they're about to die. So they are, maybe they want to be killed at the hand of Gideon. Can you hear now, Deborah? And now I can't hear you because you're muted automatically.
I can hear now. I admitted the sound off by accident.
Okay, there you go. Okay, well, let's look at what ancient Israel says, what Alter says. We're on page 151, beginning with verse 11 below the line, the road of the tent dwellers. These would be encampments of nomads still evident in the Jordan Valley. Gideon is heading into desert country. Thought itself secure, thought itself is merely implied in the Hebrew. The lad wrote down for him the notables and the elders of Sukkot. The captive boy is constrained to be an informer, though it's likely that literacy at this moment in the history of Israel was limited to a privileged elite. The writer evidently assumed that it was sufficiently widespread that he could attribute the skill of writing to a random lad seized by Gideon. And it's just fascinating to me that the commentary, both Robert Alter and the commentary in our text, thought worth it to say something about how just a young man knew how to write, and that it's something to comment about. Just I wasn't even thinking about that. Okay, on to 152. Give bread to your famished men. Gideon, in his verbatim repetition of the words of the notables, adds a single telling word, famished, which was used by the narrator but not by them, and changes army to men. That is to say, to famished fighting men, you were brazen enough to deny food. Harrowed with them the men of Sukkot. Yeah, so harrowed. So in our text, in our translation, that he taught them. So he harrowed with them, the men of Sukkot. Given that he goes on to kill the elders of Penuel, we may infer that the same fatal result is achieved at Sukkot by the harrowing, a slow and painful death. In the Masoretic text, the verb used appears to mean cause to know. Hence the bizarre King James Version in which Gideon taught the elders with thorns and thistle. The Septuagint, the Greek translation, shows harrowed, a difference of one consonant in the Hebrew, which is the likely reading. So so I don't know what that word would be. So I would guess that the Daled is changed to a resh. And if you do that, that could be understood, because often a Daled and a resh, if you how to write a Daled and a resh, the difference between them is just a little tail that sticks out, right? So if I were to write, let me just make sure that we all know the difference. Right? So this is a resh, this is a daled. You take off that little tail at the end, it's the same letter. So when you're writing as a scribe, it would be a common mistake. So if it's yud resh ayin, then that's how it becomes harrowed with thorn and thistle, as opposed to taught with thorn and thistle. Okay? 18. They were just like you, the princes in their features. The Midianite kings imagine that they are flattering Gideon, but in divulging the family resemblance, they pronounce their own death sentence. By the ethic of family blood vengeance, he now feels obliged to kill them. So again, we have to remember what happened in chapter 7. And so Gideon's brothers were killed by the Midianites, and now he's just making sure that they were killed by these kings, and because of that, that's why he's going to kill them. 19, my mother's sons, and not the sons of any other of my father's wives. The connection then with Gideon is a strong one, because these were not merely half-brothers. Yeter, his firstborn. Blood vengeance is a family affair, and so Gideon wants his firstborn to carry out the sentence. He may also want to toughen him to killing, which is, in a sense, the family business. He was afraid, of course, not of the captive and probably fettered kings, but of the act of stabbing them. And 21 on 153, you rise and stab us, for as the man, so is his valor. Killing is a grown man's business for both sides in the martial code of this story. They also may assume that a proven warrior like Gideon will finish them off with one swift blow. The crescent ornaments, this detail is proleptic of the agreement to which he comes with his men. All right, so I guess that means we're going to see something about these crescents a little bit later. Okay, so let's finish the chapter now, 22 to 35. Yeah. Vayomru ish Yisrael el Gidon, Mishal banu gam ata, gam bincha, gam ben benecha, ki hoshatanu miyad Midian. So the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, you, your son, your grandson, because you saved us from the hand of Midian. So in other words, the people of Israel are calling on Gideon to be the first king of Israel. 23, Vayomer alehem Gidon, lo emshol ani bachem, velo yimshol beni bachem, Adonai yimshol bachem. So Gideon says, I am not going to rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. God will rule over you. 24, Vayomer alehem Gidon, esh Allah mikem she'ela, utenuli ish nezem shelalo, ki nizme zahav lahem, ki yishmaelim hem. And Gideon said to them, I would make a request of you, that you give me every man the earrings of his spoil, because they had golden earrings, because they were Ishmaelites. That is, so the spoils of Midian, what the parenthetical narrator is telling us is that the people of Midian are Ishmaelites, and that's why it was common for them to have earrings. Okay, so 25, Vayomru, Naton nitain, Vayifresu et hasimla, Vayashlichu shama ish nezem shalalo. And so they said, okay, we will give, and they spread out a garment, and they threw onto it, everybody, the gold earring that they had taken. 26, Vayehi mishkal nizmei hazahav, asher sha'al, elef ushvamaot zahav, levad min ha-saharonim, vahanetifot, uvigdei ha'argaman she'al malchei Midian, ulevad min ha'anakot, asher b'tsavarei gimaleihem. So the weight of the gold earrings that which he requested was 1,700 of the gold weight of shekels, 1,700 shekels, and that was excluding the crescents and the pendants and the purple raiment that was on the purple garments that were on the kings of Midian, and also not including the chains that were around the necks of the camels. 27, Vayas oto Gidon le'ephod, vayatseg oto be'iro be'ofra, vayiznu kol Yisrael acharav sham, vayehi leGidon uleveto lemokesh. And Gideon made an ephod, some kind of garment. We know the word ephod from the Torah as described as what the Kohanim wear. We don't know. It's some kind of garment. And so he made a garment from the stuff that he got from Midian, from the kings of Midian, and he put it in his city in Ophrah. And all of Israel went astray after it there, that I guess they worshiped it. And it was a snare to Gideon and his house. We'll understand what that means when we look at the commentary. Vayikana Midyan lifnei b'nei Yisrael, v'lo yasfu laset rosham, v'tishkot haaretz arba'im shana b'yamei Gidon. Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they couldn't lift their heads up anymore. They couldn't rise up in rebellion anymore. The land was quiet for 40 years. So actually, let's stop here and look at the commentary on this on these verses. So 22 to 28. Let's go back to the very bottom of 228. The men of Israel. The term is said to connote the body of free men who formed the army. 229, rule. Though the word reign is not used, it is obvious that hereditary leadership was intended. Already the need for mutual support was becoming increasingly felt among the tribes. The Lord shall rule over you. This magnificent act of self-abnegation was the crowning glory of Gideon's career. To have achieved a decisive victory and restored national independence, gained the loyalty and confidence of his people, and yet retain his simplicity and humility is evidence of true greatness. With prophetic insight, he saw that Israel's destiny was bound up with God's sovereignty and not with temporal kingship. So that's just in a bracket here in our text, and just a religious comment about Gideon.
Makes me think of George Washington.
Right,
So
right.
the general wins the battle, and then they
Yes.
all gained, and he said no.
Right. So the ephod made by Gideon, and his desire to leave a monument which would perpetuate the memory of the miraculous deliverance of which he had been the divine instrument, Gideon asked for a portion of the gold that the Israelites had taken as spoil. Out of this he made an ephod, which afterwards became an object of worship. Earrings, this is probably the meaning of nezim in this passage. It can also denote nose ring worn by women. Ishmaelites, not in the sense of descendants of Ishmael, but close relatives of Ishmael, since the Midianites were descended from Keturah. So after Sarah died, Abraham married Keturah. And Keturah, with Keturah, Abraham had other children. And among the children is listed Midian. Okay? Ishmael is through the handmaid of Sarah, Hagar. So, who, according to the rabbis, was identified with Hagar, the mother of Ishmael. So, yes, but then you have to understand, that is the classic comment or understanding by the rabbis of who Keturah was, that she is Hagar, but it means to understand the change of name, and that there's no explanation in the Torah that of why Hagar was now known as Keturah. Okay. A garment. The simla was a wide outer wrapper which could readily be converted into a sack by tying the corners together. The text is literally the garment for the definite article. See, okay. That's just a grammatical thing. 26, the value of the shekels was about 70 pounds sterling. So whenever this was edited, that's how much these gold rings would have been worth. Pendants, 230. The noun netifot is also found in Isaiah 3. The translation is based on the etymology from nataf, to drip. The Targum, the Aramaic, translates diadems, chaplets. Some scholars connect it with nataf, stacked, and explain it as capsules in which the sweet-smelling gum was worn. Others interpret it as a pendant hanging over the heart, or attached to other ornaments such as earrings or necklaces. The glistening pearl or metal bead gave the appearance of a drop, hence the name netifot. the purple raiment, the badge of royalty. The color, a red purple, was extremely costly. The chains, etc., in the Orient, animals are still adorned in this manner. Ephod was to serve as a memorial. Associated as it was with the vestments of the high priest, it was but natural that the object should come to be considered as something sacred. It frequently appears in the Bible as an object of worship and a means of ascertaining the divine will. Ophrah, see chapter 6. After it, Rashi and Kimchi qualified this statement as meaning that they strayed after Gideon's death, not during his lifetime. Okay, so it seems from context that it was during his lifetime, but the rabbis, the commentaries are suggesting otherwise. Unto Gideon and his house. It was, remark Jewish expositors, the cause of the deaths of most of his sons. So in other words, that's how it became a snare, that this ephod became an object of idol worship and also a bad omen for his sons. All right, let's look at ancient Israel on these verses. Back to page 153 in ancient Israel, verse 23. I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. This emphatic repetition of their proposal that he establish a dynasty reflects an ideology circulating in pre-monarchic Israel and which will still be maintained by the prophet Samuel. The vehicle of the Lord's rule is the spirit or charisma with which he invests the ad hoc leaders of Israel. And Gideon said to them, this repetition of the formula for introducing dialogue without an intervening response from the second party in the dialogue indicates that they are baffled or perhaps even angered by his refusal to accept their offer of kingship. Gideon realizes that he now has to propose something to placate or reassure them, but what he proposes proves to be disastrous. Rings, these are earrings or nose rings, not rings worn on the finger. As they were Ishmaelites, Ishmaelite and Midianite are often interchangeable terms. These semi-nomadic folk were evidently known for wearing golden ornaments. Gideon made them into an ephod. The clear allusion in this episode is to Aaron's fashioning the golden calf from the golden ornaments that he collects from the Israelites. In other contexts, the ephod is a priestly breastplate or an oracular device. The latter function may come into play here. In any case, the declaration that Israel went whoring after it clearly indicates it was treated as a sacred icon to be worshipped instead of God. So let's just finish the chapter now, 29 to the end, back to page 231. Vayelech Yerubbaal ben Yoash, so here his name changed from Gideon to Yerubbaal. Vayeshev beveto, uli Gidon hayu shivim banim, Yotzei Yerecho, Kinashim Rabot Hayulo. So Yerubbaal, son of Yoash, returned to his house, or dwelt in his house, and Gideon had 70 sons, the produce of his loins, because he had many wives. 31, Ufilag Sho Asher Bishechem, Yaldalo Gamhi Ben, Vayasam et Shemo Avimelech. And his concubine that he had in the town of Shechem also gave him a son, and he gave his name as Avimelech. Vayamot Gidon ben Yoash b'seva tova, vayikaver bekever Yoash aviv be'ofra avi ha'ezri. And Gideon died, Gideon the son of Yoash died in a good old age, and was buried in the tomb of his father Yoash in Ophrah of the Avi-Ezrites. Vayehi ka'asher mate Gidon, vayashuvu b'nei Yisrael, vayiznu achareha be'alim, vayasimu lahem ba'al brit le'elohim. And when Gideon died, the people of Israel returned to whore after the Baal gods and made Baal Berit into their god. Velo zachru b'nei Yisrael et Adonai Elohehem hamatzilotam miyad kol oivehem misaviv. And the people of Israel did not remember God, their God, who saved them from the hand of their enemies round about. 35, Velo asu chesed im Beit Yerubbaal Gidon kechol hatova asher asa im Israel. And they didn't act kindly with the house of Yerubbaal, who was Gideon, in the way that he was good to Israel. So that's the end of the story of Gideon. So let's look at the commentary below. Dwelt in his own house, since the land was peaceful, he concentrated on his household and on raising a family. Although Gideon did not desire to exercise leadership over Israel, he should nevertheless have passed through the land to maintain order rather than settle down in his house. Sons of his body begotten, this denotes that they were actually his sons, not his grandsons. Many wives, this was to his degradation, for a leader of Israel as a king should not have so many wives. He called, literally he put, assigned. Da'at Sofrim explains that this verb denotes not the name given to a child at birth, but conferred upon him at a later stage of his life. Upon recognizing his kingly behavior and talents, he gave him this name. Avimelech, a regal name, common among the kings of Canaan. This name indicated that he was destined to become a king. Sepulcher, well, that's the tomb of Joash. The existence of family sepulchers is evidence that the Israelites were settled in the land. Again went astray, as they had done after the death of previous judges. The seductive influence of the Canaanite cults was, in the absence of the restraining rule of the judge, too strong to resist. Baal Brit appears in chapter 9 as El Brit, the god of Shechem, where a shrine and its name flourished. The name Baal of a covenant is said to denote their love and allegiance to this deity. It's most likely that the entire nation went astray such a short time after they had completely forsaken paganism. There were, however, a large number that worshipped idols and were left unpunished. Kindness, what this lack of kindness meant is perhaps to be deduced from chapter 9. Okay. So let's look at the ancient Israel, which is only one comment here. Avimelech, this name, which had some general currency, incorporates the element melech, king, the very role that Gideon rejected when it was offered, but that this reprobate son will try to arrogate for himself. Though Gideon himself dies in ripe old age, retribution, perhaps for making the ephod, overtakes his offspring through the malefic agency of Avimelech. All right, so we have to see about that story. I have to end class now because I have an appointment soon. So we'll stop here for today. We will meet next week, which is the Friday before Passover. But the Friday after that is the Friday during Passover. We will not have class. So when I send out the recording in a little bit, I'll remind people in the email that in 2 weeks we will not have class. Okay? So have a good day, everyone. And Marlene, a little birdie, told me that it's your birthday tomorrow. So happy birthday.
It is. Thank you.
Okay? All right.
All right,
Take
thanks,
care, everybody.
Leo.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
You coming to shul tomorrow, Marlene?
Yep.
Are you gonna get birthday kisses?
All right. I'll take them. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.